Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for AM Business. Now, the Ghana Revenue Authority achieved its target for last year. Data cited by Joy Business shows the GRA was able to collect a little over 57 billion cedis. Today on AM Business, George Riafe engages Commissioner General Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu-Amoah on Ghana's revenue mobilization profile.
Yeah, I think we realized where we stood and the challenges that are around. And if I would just chip in, normally, if you have read Who Moved My Cheese, when your cheese is moved, you try to find out where can you get other cheese. And those who have read that book. So basically what we're trying to do is to look at various avenues, and we put a number of strategies that will ensure that we will achieve the target. I mean, if you recall, some of them, number one, the Ghana card was one issue, though I will not say that much money has come through the first year yet, but at least it created an awareness, and many people started trying to make sure that they can come in and file their taxes, especially when you made a lot of noise about the professionals. Number two, we talked about the waiver of interests and penalties. And that one, for example, by the time we ended the year, more than 2,100 taxpayers had applied for the waiver of interest and penalty, even at the domestic side only. And the total of about 2.2 billion of debts, out of which about 1.1 billion was paid before the end of December, and another interest of about 400 and penalties of about 600 were waived. So again, these debts that has existed for a couple of years, and people took advantage because we saw the pandemic situation, and then put in that policy to say that if you can come in and we give you a spread over 6 months to pay your tax, and you can pay the principal, we're ready to waive the interest and penalties. And many people took advantage of it.
How did digitization also contribute? You have the online payment, so even though it was quite difficult to let these persons go into these companies, do the double checking, there was an online platform where businesses could still pay their taxes. How did that also contribute to the numbers that we saw for end of year 2021?
It contributed significantly because there are two key things that happened last year. One, in terms of being able to file online, and many people filed, and then two, being able to pay online. And for the first time in January, we were able to take off all payments out of our offices, and that created room in the offices such that people don't go there to queue. You just go there to transact your tax business. Number two, it removed the issue about dishonest checks and the issue about sometimes money flowing from the authority even to the bank accounts. So we didn't have any dishonest checks because people will only pay when they have the money, and they just have to clear. Previously, we had got a lot of checks that come in and they don't get honored. So that also, and then for when people have convenience, you know, paying tax is not easy, as I always say. But if it's convenient for you to pay, then at least you take advantage as well. So one, it blocked some of the leakages, which was like an example of the leak. And then two, it made it convenient for people. So it also helped a lot. And then also digitalization on the port side. When we introduced the ICAMs, I think we introduced, as we saw in 2020, we saw the increases beginning in 2020. And it continued significantly all over the year. And that led to customs division doing over 27% year-on-year increase and going over 16 billion. So that aside, that aspect also helped a lot. So digitalization actually really helped. And Ghana.gov coming through, because again, now when we do, the collections are done by the banks within 48 hours. Automatically the money moves to the central bank. Previously, they have to do a manual transfer, and there were also issues about reconciling what have been transferred and what have not been transferred. That was for working with two banks. Today we work with 22 banks, and we don't have those reconciliation. And you can imagine if with two banks we had reconciliation challenges, if not because of automation, digitalization, we would have never. But when we talked about wanted to introduce all the banks to the question people ask me, you are struggling with reconciliation with two banks. How will you manage 22 banks? And digitalization did it. So I think that is also a very significant part of it.
Let's look at, they're not getting into specific numbers or ratios. Let's look at the the various tax types as well, domestic customs as well. Was it all rosy in all these tax types, or there were some challenges in some areas that has come up to your attention?
There were challenges in some areas that have come to our attention, and many other areas did very well. PAYE, for example, improved significantly. I think that as we were coming out of the pandemic, I'm not saying coming out, not that it has ended, but people found ways of managing it, and therefore more people were in employment. And again, some of our the work on PAYE in terms of making sure that more people pay the PAYE. So we saw PAYE increasing. We saw corporate income tax, and I'm looking at domestic corporate income tax also increasing. Some of the sectors, like the financial sector, did quite well. Some of the mining areas also did well. But some of the areas that we still saw we had challenges is with personal income tax, for example. We know personal income tax, the vehicle income tax are also treated as personal income tax. And with the suspension of the vehicle income tax in 2021 budget, it meant that those incomes, so that saw a shortfall from the previous year to the current year. So this year we need to find out ways of being able to bring in some more people into the personal income tax bracket. Another area that we also saw some declines include the mineral royalties, and we are trying to also understand some of the dynamics there and also be able to see where the shortfalls are. And then I also want to say that in the extractive sector, because we focus a bit more on compliance, we're able to get some payments coming through, and it's something that we continue to do in the year that we have entered to make sure that we'll be able to get some more revenues from that area. So to answer your question, yes, some tax types did well, other tax types did not do all that well, and we have analyzed it, and we are trying to find ways of improving them.
With respect to communication service tax, and I stand to be corrected, was it more of the revision in the rate, or it has to do with the fact that you struggled in collecting taxes in that area?
I think it's more of the revision of the rates.
Okay.
Yes, because the communication service tax, the CST, because of the automation as well as the work that is being done by the common platform for monitoring, I think that as far as going forward is concerned, since they started the monitoring, we don't have many challenges in the collection. And it is the revision of the rates that actually, and people were expecting that with the revision of the rates and with the increased usage in terms of data and other things by many people for online meetings, maybe we'll have made more money than the previous year. But I don't think that that increase was sufficient to make money. And I think that the government did it for a good purpose, because we all knew that that was a time that people were relying on data, and therefore it was necessary for them to be able to use the data effectively at less cost.
A target of 57 billion was set in a year where, unlike compared to previous years, it has been reviewed and all the rest. If you look at the tax GDP ratio, we're still doing 13% compared to, some would say, our peers. What would you tell those who might argue that sometimes these targets are still low, and therefore, quote, we shouldn't be excited when GRA is able to collect these taxes? Looking at the size of our economy, we should be collecting more than what we've collected.
I think we don't deny the fact that as a nation, we need to improve upon our tax collection. And therefore, we believe that there are many strategies that we have to put in place that will ensure that our revenue increases significantly. And that is one of the reasons why we saw that this year's revenue collection in terms of year-on-year increase is the most highest year-on-year increase in the last 10 years of 26.3%. And then you also saw that as you have said, the tax to GDP ratio, which was about 12.59% last year, now increased to 13.4%. And in the next year's budget, that is 2022, we have budgeted to increase it further to 16.5%. And so, if you look at the structure of our tax system now, there is room to change the structure and to change the methods and to ensure that we bring more people into the tax net and therefore be able to move towards the 18-20%, which is what so to conclude on your trying to answer your question, I won't say that the targets as they are set now is low. The targets are quite significantly high, but if we are able to work on the various methods and the various issues of ensuring compliance, then we should be able to move our tax ratio very high.
But you don't. What do you say to the critics or the skeptics who are saying that GRA has met its targets over the years because the targets were low?
I think that you will notice that even over the years, in the last 5 years, this is the first year that the target has not been revised at the mid-year review. For every year, the target has been revised downwards. And it tells you that the target is not that low. If it is that low, then it would have been very easy to meet the targets. But you see consistently that as the struggles come in the middle of the year, the tax is revised downwards, and then we do achieve the targets. But for 2021, the target that was set in 2020 at the beginning of the year, I mean, the budget was read, was not revised downwards, and it's this target that we met. So the targets are not low at all. They are quite high in the midst of the situation, I mean, the environment.
And that was AM Business for another Wednesday morning. Call it a windfall for our revenue mobilization. Thank you for watching. We'll be back to sew it all up on the AM show. Do stay.